Siyanda Baduza, basic income researcher at the Institute for Economic Justice, joins me now for a discussion. Siyanda, I don't know what you made, maybe perhaps before I raise a couple of issues that stood out for me, just what you thought from watching or listening to the minister.
I mean, watching the minister today, and the portfolio committee meetings earlier today where there was presentation by the service providers who did the audit, I think it confirms to us a lot of what we had been saying for months, which is that digitization of systems doesn't inherently mean that they become more efficient or fairer, especially if they're implemented without the adequate oversight. And what the presentations found and what the minister has reported on, those types of vulnerabilities, it seems, do actually exist. And a lot of the system did actually have a lot of those gaps that we were talking about. So a lot of the issues that we had pointed out with regards to digitization were definitely confirmed in the proceedings today.
Well, they have identified some challenges, she says, but they are yet to conclude, presumably the extent to which they have those challenges. But then my mind then went back to how ANC MPs in particular treated the students who actually exposed the system and who, as far as many people are concerned, proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the system is very vulnerable.
Right. I think it definitely was unfair to immediately dismiss what the students had, because we did put out a statement as well, and we had congratulated them on their findings. And even on our side, even without going into the technical detail that they did, we were also able to find that the high number of applications in that 18 to 19 cohort is probably true and does exist. And we just used SASSA's own data, as well as comparing that with birth rates from Stats SA, which found very similar findings to what they had found in terms of high rates of application. So they definitely weren't just making things up. It would have been unfair to dismiss them.
I was also struck by the fact that they didn't ask for additional help or assistance in the form of help that would have come from your HOCs and your SIUs, for example. And yet, despite all of that, they were the ones who actually gave themselves a 30-day deadline.
Right. I think as they've acknowledged as well, this is probably only the start of the investigations into what actually went on, because so what the service providers, for example, were able to uncover is more general weaknesses in the system versus any direct evidence of any large scale wrongdoing. So for example, we know the gaps that they pointed out, all of the technical gaps, but we still don't know, for example, how many of the applications in that 18 to 19 age group were actually fraudulent, as was alleged. We don't actually know that yet because they haven't had access to that type of data. But even if if there were, for example, payments made out to fraudulent applications, it would also mean that the scale of the issue lies beyond just SASSA and their administration. It would mean that people, for example, were able to open bank accounts using fraudulently accessed IDs, and those also went through. And again, that's also information that we don't know. So I think that those issues, at this stage, we've just had a brief scoping study of general weaknesses. But in order to uncover the true scope of the problem, there probably need to be more parties involved.
And we're talking only about a part of the problems that people like yourselves have actually identified. You are in court challenging the regulations, you say, or you're arguing unlawfully and unconstitutionally excluding millions of people who actually deserve to be beneficiaries of the SRD grant.
Yeah, we are. And I think a small bit of concern today was just some of the recommendations that were presented by the auditors or the service providers who undertook this investigation from SASSA. A lot of them are proposing basically intensifying the same types of digital barriers that we've been calling out. So, for example, one of their recommendations is to limit the number of applications that can be made using one phone number to just one. So to tie phone numbers to ID numbers. But it means then that they weren't actually engaging with the true context of the SRD grant, because they would have known that even the concession that SASSA made to allow people to apply on more than one phone number was a way to mitigate the digital barriers that exist. So a lot of the things that they did present, we would hope that in the actual recommendations that SASSA chooses to apply some discretion to what they apply and what they don't apply. So, for example, even the biometric verification system, which increases barriers to people because you need a smartphone and internet access to be able to do that. Right now, you only have to do that if you're suspected of fraud or if you've been found to be a victim of fraud. But in their proposal, they want it expanded to the entire system, which would definitely be disastrous and exacerbate a lot of the issues that we've already brought up.
What, in your view, lies behind their service providers in particular insistence on sticking to what you say is actually or are flawed systems? In other words, are they undermining what you and other people have identified as problems, or is it a question of deliberately, in certain instances, excluding people due to budgetary and other considerations? Have you been able to put a finger on it? Okay, we seem to have a problem with Siyanda Baduza's line. He's, of course, a researcher with the Institute for Economic Justice. You'll recall that they are in court as we speak, challenging the modus operandi around the SRD grants, because they believe that the way it's being done, it is unlawfully and unconstitutionally excluding millions of people. This conversation, of course, coming on the same day that the Minister of Social Development did admit that there were problems with the systems, but 30 days to actually have a full and thorough appraisal was just simply not enough. They are asking for more time, but they do acknowledge that problems do exist, but the extent of those problems and the impact on the entire system is what still hasn't been thorough.